I'm so excited. Ruthie Rogers is stateside. She's here in New York promoting this fabulous new book. It's called Table Four at the River Cafe, Conversations about Food and Life. You don't want to miss it. Ruthie Rogers is the co founder of the River Cafe in London, and she's an award winning chef. She's also the godmother to so many major chefs around the world. You can't believe it, but that's how she does it. She makes a family wherever she goes. Ruthie is also the host of the podcast Ruthie's Table 4, and she's written 13 cookbooks, including the River Cafe Cookbook, River Cafe 30, and the River Cafe Lookbook. She was awarded an MBE in 2010 and a CBE in 2020. Those are the highest honors of the royal family over in the UK. You can follow her on Instagram at Ruthie Rogers.
My first question for you is you delved into the childhood of, I would call them a lot of the talent and shapeshifters of our times that you talk about in the book, and we'll get to them. But I want to know about your childhood. So, can you tell us a little bit about little Ruthie?
Little Ruthie. Well, I was grew up in only 100 miles north of New York. I was born in the Catskills in a very small town called Monticello. It was in the area where there are a lot of hotels in the summer. My father was a doctor, and my mother a librarian, and we had a really very. I have an older brother, Michael Elias, who's a writer, and an older sister who's a painter, Susan Elias, and I think we all grew up with a sense of community, against a sense of social responsibility, and a feeling that ideas and questions and discussion were all part of our family. And I think that food was a place where, if we ate very simply, but the table was a place where we all sat with friends, with family, or just each other to talk and to enjoy and to question. And so I think I did grow up with that more than a sense of the deliciousness of food was the importance of the table. But
Hmm.
my mother was a very good, simple cook, and I think I enjoyed cooking and food and friendship. And then when I was about 12, my parents moved from this small town to Woodstock, which was a revelation because there was a town that also had farms, and it had
Hmm.
country markets, but it also had a very strong culture of creative world of it was an arts colony before it became music oriented. The people there had chosen to live there rather than many of them had been born there. There were people we had a very small cinema which showed great, sort of old films and new films. We had the Art Students League. We lived on a
Wow.
stream, and it was just a very, I know for my parents, it was just such an exciting place to be as opposed to where they lived before. That was, and we in the summer we ate without even knowing it. We ate very seasonal food. We had the corn in the summer. We had pumpkins in the winter. Trips to New York to see great musicals and have dinners out. And I think, and then I went to school in Colorado for my last 2 years of high school. So that was also very interesting, into a very liberal school called the Rocky Mountain School.
Hmm. Sure, I've heard of that. So really, you there's a sense of a world stage really in your upbringing, in that the art of Woodstock and that the ideas and the gathering at the table sort of grew you.
Yeah,
It expanded your thinking about serving a lot of different kinds of people,
yeah,
which is what the book really brings us into. By the way, I love the way you separated out the folks that have come to the restaurant by categories that are very interesting. We have everybody from David Furnish and Elton John to Emily Mortimer to the McCartney family. The McCartney family has a similar upbringing to you, I would say, in terms of the garden and the natural food, uh, seasonal food. And the Beckhams, I just watched that documentary and loved it. Salman Rushdie. Food is family. When I came to your restaurant, I felt the warmth of the place the minute I entered.
Yeah.
That's deliberate. Can you tell us why food is family is important?
I think that people really see food as a measure of their success. Michael Caine said that,
Mhm.
his idea of comfort food when he was growing up was potatoes, and now it's caviar. I think that says something in a very kind of, joking, if charming way. And I think that the importance of people remember the first time they went out for their birthday. People remember their parents taking them. Oh, there's some parents, the big meal out was going to McDonald's. So food and memory and family, looking back on their family. A lot of people talk more about their grandmother's cooking than their mother's cooking. So I think they talk about cooking for their children. A friend of mine talked about what it was like when his parents were divorced and his father had to cook him meals on a Saturday to show that he was still part of the family. It's just, I
Mhm.
think, a question of how people really interact with food, with family, with meals together.
In a family tradition, the table is everything. The table is where we gather. And
Yeah.
then I was struck by Frank Geary's story
Oh, yeah.
because he grew up in Canada and he's Jewish and he remembers no Jews allowed signs places, which was very
Yeah.
obviously to him personally horrible and disturbing.
Mm,
And his father died young.
mm.
And so his story came from that place of really tragedy, I felt. But then it's turned around in the book. And I wonder the great we're talking about the great architect Frank Gehry. Ruthie, from your estimation, from all these folks that you've spoken with and fed,
Hmm.
can you please speak to poverty in childhood and what it does to a human being?
I think what it does is, I mean, it's so personal. There are families who grew up in poverty and, you know, have come out of it, or they're still in it. It's not even growing. There's, the concern of somebody like Darren Walker, who was on Head Start and, could
Mhm,
only eat the dark meat of a chicken, never had the light meat of a chicken. Tracy Emin, who describes being so hungry, uh, and being fed by the Salvation Army at Christmas.
mhm,
I think
mhm.
it's, for all of us who feel the agony of children during COVID who didn't have lunch, and that was their main meal of the day. For students in universities now who go to food banks, we all know about, that food and hunger is painful. It's a physical pain. And I think, to have that in childhood is, or at any time in your life, is something that is, you know, unfair.
So let's say somebody comes to the restaurant and they have a memory actually in the restaurant, like Mel Brooks with the spaghetti. Can you
Yeah.
tell that story?
That he had his first spaghetti cook. He can remember the name of the woman who cooked him his first bowl of pasta.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, and then he you made his son spaghetti
Yeah.
and he kept I loved that spaghetti. That's great. That spaghetti. That's, where
Yeah.
his mother had made kind of cardboard spaghetti in the
Yeah.
oven. That was
Yeah.
beautiful. So I love the Michael Caine a whole lot. Bob Iger was interesting with his wife Willow Bay Iger
Hmm.
and how he kind of became a cook
Well, I think
because
what
he
happens is that people really use food as well to, to, to share. People, make food to, um, as I say, give them comfort. They cook food to impress. They give food to welcome somebody into their home. They, on their first
Mhm.
date, if they're falling in love, they want to make something that expresses the love. So I think food and
Mhm.
cooking and eating, covers all the, those emotions. I think what we've done in this book, is to let people listen to without listen, with through the transcript of the book, to hear people's stories about food in their lives. And I
Mhm.
think that this book is really there for people to see another side of a person, whether it's a film director they love, or a
Mhm.
politician they voted for, or an artist whose work they've seen in a museum, or a musician whose songs they've listened to. It's
Mhm.
really looking at people's lives through the lens of food, and how their memories, how their values are translated into
Mhm.
this experience. And so I think that's what we really tried with the podcast. So the podcast was started as a way to connect with people during the pandemic. We thought about just reading a recipe a day and letting people, um, listen to that and be influenced by
Mhm.
that. And then we realized that there was a story to be told, that we could segue from reading a recipe to telling a story. And I think
To
there is
curling up
something
with a
for.
story. I would like for you to tell me what you loved about the book and who you loved in the book.
I think the book is really, I'm so proud of it. I love the, the variation of people who've partaken. I think that, I will get the book now. I love that we divided it up into family, into tradition, into discovery, into art and politics, and then food. And the food section is the chefs that we've worked with, chefs that there are a lot of people who did podcasts who are not in this book. And I think that, we will do another volume. But what I really, thought was listening, as I said, everyone has a story, and the story, whether you are, I think, whether
Mhm.
you're a film director, or you're a politician, or whether you're a chef, or, one of my children, is a story of life, and a story that we can all relate
Mhm.
to. I also think that I love the book because it's beautifully
Mhm.
produced. I think the photographs, well, we want all the photographs were differently taken. Some were taken on the iPhone, some were
Mhm.
taken with a camera, some were taken in the river cafe, some were on a park bench outside. But to get a consistency, we made a still life
Mhm.
of every photograph. We took the
Mhm.
photographs and we put them on a table in the River Cafe, sometimes with a plate of oranges, sometimes with a piece of bread, sometimes with just a glass of wine or coffee. And I think that gives a consistency to the book, that every story is from the
Mhm.
table. And all the introductions are by me. So my voice is very much in it. We thought about having
Mhm.
recipes, and then we realized that this was a book of
Mhm.
stories, not recipes. And I think that it's, clear. It's a book that you can take to bed and read it as a book. And it's a book you can keep on the table and just browse through. I've had so many people read it and, write to me and saying that they couldn't put it down. They just wanted to go from one person's story to another. And it's just an experience of people, like Johnny Ive, like Wes Anderson. I'm just looking through it now. But most of all, I think it's a book that is really, an expression of what the River Cafe is, what food is, the way we like to cook, the way we like to eat, family, friends, solitude, groups, all that is part of the whole story of what food is. And I love this book. It's the first book I've ever done that doesn't have a recipe. And I think it's probably it doesn't have a recipe, but it teaches
Mhm.
you and makes you understand food in a way that a cookbook
And yet
doesn't.
it's mouth-watering. Sarah
Yeah,
Jessica Parker
it
talks
makes you
about her pork
hungry.
chops. I'm gonna make them for dinner tonight. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
good,
very
good.
inspiring. Wes Anderson
Yeah,
and
thank
the
you.
Italian hamburger. It
Yeah,
wasn't it interesting to you, Ruthie, that there were no duplicates? That everybody comes to food when you ask that essential question at the end,
yeah,
"What's your comfort food?" There were no 2
yes.
answers that were alike.
Now, somebody, it could be a peanut butter and jelly sandwich they had with their
Yeah,
mother. Um, Austin Butler's mother was very ill, and he would come home from school every day at lunchtime and have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich with her. Other people, remember a food they had, when they had, a celebration, and that always reminds them of happiness. So that's their comfort food.
yeah,
I think it really is. It's a very, we were asked, a friend of mine, when we first did this, a friend said, who had experience in radio, said, ask everyone the same question. And, a lot of questions I'm asked is that, what would be your last meal? And I think that's a horrible question. I don't like being asked about the idea of food just before you die. So we thought, rather than something which is, kind of miserable, we would ask a question that actually gives you, what comfort is, because food is comfort. Very often we don't eat because we're hungry. We're eating because we need some sense of comfort.
mhm. You also so beautifully rendered in these stories, uh, how food makes people feel.
I'm really glad. I think people will really enjoy this book. I think it will give them,
Oh,
as I said, it's a book that will inspire you to, to cook. It'll be inspiring to read. And I think that the people who partake in this book really have so many great stories to tell. And I am really proud of it. And I think we've achieved with Amy Bell, with the
yeah,
photographers, with the designers, but most of all with the people who really took the time to, do the interviews and be part of the book. They've all read their own transcripts. They came back to us with feedback. They sent us photographs. They really, there's a real sense that this book, as I say, it's the first non-cookbook that I've ever done, but I do think it is probably a very important food book in terms of
mhm,
pleasure and inspiring. Food is really for everybody to a way of expressing yourself. I've had people who didn't want to come on the podcast or were worried about coming because they said, "Oh, I don't know how to cook," or "I don't really ever, go to restaurants." But that's not what it's about. The book is about memories, and the book is about the future. It's about family, and it's about fun.
yes. Oh my gosh. I loved also how sometimes in the storytelling, I'm going to pick Linda Evangelista for this because I loved her story.
Yeah, she
There's
was
not,
great. Yeah,
Ruthie, there isn't one story I didn't love. I thought
yeah.
everybody was
I'm so
interesting.
happy to hear
And
this.
I
Well, I hope
never,
everybody listening is hearing that
they
how
will
much you've
hear it.
enjoyed it.
Believe me, millions of people are going to hear this
Yeah.
message. It is so evocative, and it also by as you read the stories you start to think of your own experience, but you
Yes.
also get to
Yeah.
know these folks. I love
Yes.
Nigella Lawson, but I've never
Yeah.
heard her personally render something, but
Yeah.
about the family garden and about
Yeah.
grandma, or
Or Nancy Pelosi saying she had chocolate sorbet for breakfast, and her father, she never ate at a table without a tablecloth, And I just think it's just everybody has my son talking about having chicken with his father walking through the
yeah,
streets of Paris, because they couldn't wait to get home to eat it. So I think all this, that's what we wanted to do with this book, is to say everyone has a story. Everybody thinks, has eats and has a different way of eating food, cooking food, sharing food.
mhm.
And I think this book really, I'm really pleased that you like it so
No,
much.
I really,
And
Ruthie, I loved it. Now, I'm a fan of your pod. I loved your podcast. I love it. But
thank you.
I find, and those conversations are always so delicious and they go deep. Here,
Thank you.
I feel like I got a life story in every bite.